A very good evening and welcome educators to yet another Caprix Educators Talk. And today we are here to discuss on digital detox and engaging minds beyond screens with stories. And we have our guest of honor today, Ms. Deepa Kiran ma'am, the founder of Story Arts Foundation, an international storyteller and national award-winning educationalist, TEDx speaker, writer, actor, filmmaker, and so on. Through her works, she's connected with children and educators and parents and has reached over 80,000 educators globally on teaching with stories. In her performances, trainings, and talks, she waves in unique musical elements and different languages to create a rich, inviting, and memorable experience for everyone. She has received a national award for her educational videos and research. Caprix Learning Lab is very happy to have you here today, ma'am, to discuss on a very pressing topic. In fact, we have a lot of educators, parents who are watching this event happening live, and I'm sure we all have a lot of inputs to gain from this discussion with you today, and we all welcome you for this session. Yes. So before we get into the topic, yeah. So we have personally watched all your videos. We have seen all your TEDx talks. You've been very inspirational, and we, as a team, have certain questions to ask you before we get into the topic. And the first question is, what's the shortest story that impacted you the most? You've told many short stories across your videos, and we've all been inspired by the stories that you tell. But we wanted to know what is the one short story which has impacted you the most.
It is many stories, of course, but it's one of them is the one that my father's been telling me a lot about. This minister who always says "Yellam nanmaike," and eventually the minister gets in trouble, and the king gets in trouble, and everything gets solved. Everything is for good. That's the ending of the story. That's the starting of the story, middle of the story. So that's a story that stayed with me. Yellam nanmaike. Story of the king and the minister. Yeah.
That's a good one. And my personal favorite, of the stories that I've heard you speak is the one about the frog. The one where the frogs try to keep, climbing higher, and how the one who reaches the top is finally the one who has never given a heed to anybody's noises and the voices. Yes, so that is one of my favorites, and that is one which we keep telling to motivate teachers. So thank you for that gem of a story. And moving on to the next question. So this is a good one. If you could be a character in any story, who would you be?
I am open to being different characters, but I like characters who are witty, smart, and try to solve problems. There are a lot of women characters also like Renan Rama. Yes, I would like to be one of them. Yes.
Great. That's a good one. Thank you. And how do you feel about books being made into movies?
Yeah, I think it's a very ambitious idea. I don't believe books can really do justice. The mind has imagined it so wisely, so wildly. The movie may not do justice, but as we can see in today's times, it's helping to bring people back to reading culture, where people watch the movie and then they come and read the book. So in that sense, yeah, good. Anything that can connect back with literature. And it is visual literature. Cinema is visual literature, and I do like cinema. Well-made movies from books, I'm open to it.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Good. Okay, now. So let's move on to the next segment of this slide. That is a rapid fire round. So we will ask you questions, and it is going to be very quick. Yes. So the first question is, considering majority of the people watching this are educators, so the questions are from their point of view. How can we leverage the power of storytelling to compete with the constant allure of screens and digital distractions?
Storytelling, has I'm sorry, it's a rapid fire, but I'm going to answer a little longer. Yes. It really has far more impact on the child's mind, and children, incidentally, my observation, they are much more interested in listening to a live story than watching a movie. or any digital material. That's the final truth, because when they are listening to a story without any visuals, they have to do all the hard work of imagining it. And at the end of it, they have that deep level of satisfaction that they have imagined, they have created the entire story all by themselves. So, contrary to popular idea that we have to fight with it, I understand, there's a lot of all of that media out there, but it's not like we will lose in this competition. We have equally high chances, because of the nature of it. It's a human being sitting, conversing, talking. It will go great. Yeah, this is, and to back it up, evidence is I've never had a television in my house. I still don't have it. My children have left home, but until they were there, they are now 20 and 18. All their life, they've lived without a television. They're perfectly fine. They are interested in literature and the world and everything. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. That I think is a very important point to note for many educators today, because even though we all have smartboards, we all are having a lot of digital contents inside the classroom. I think a teacher still puts in a lot of effort in conveying a story, or reciting a rhymes with all those actions and the movements, which gets the class very excited. So very well said, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. And you, teacher, you parent, you will continue to remain your child's favorite, whatever movies come and go.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Are there specific storytelling techniques that can help students develop a love for reading and imagination?
The techniques of narrating a story orally remain powerful in any case, because it's developing listening skill. When you develop the skill of listening, you are developing an interest in the child in oral literature, basically, Sushmita, right? So when we are developing an interest in listening to oral literature, basically it can slowly transfer to reading literature also. So the techniques will remain the same, primary techniques, which is be engaging, be clear in your communication, try to keep the language simple. Even if the written text is a little complex, simplify it for telling. When there is third person narrative, try to change it, have direct voice, have a lot of dialogues, change it to dialogues. That is something that makes it much more interesting. And I would say after you have read a story, I'm sure a lot of teachers and parents do that, then tell them, oh, by the way, this book is available. Would you like to look at it? After narrating it, it becomes like a window, like a segue. But yes, these couple of things, I would say, simplify the language, use more of direct speech, see where you can add a little work with your voice, work with creating little sound effects. Yeah, all of these will bring them more into the story. And once they develop the listening skill of oral literature, we can say, hey, now, you know what? There's the book version of it. We can transfer it to the reading skill also.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That's a very important inputs today, because with so many techniques of storytelling, teachers are constantly wondering as to what technique can I use for what kind of story, and how to effectively communicate with the child. That is one query which many teachers have in mind today, and I think what you've told us today is answer that.
Yeah. So now that you've mentioned that, additionally, each one, you are unique. So please tell in what comes most naturally to you also. You will eventually find your signature style.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So moving on to the next question. How can we encourage student participation in storytelling activities?
Right. So one of the best things to do, I suggest that let us approach storytelling as not something where can two children in the class repeat the entire story. There will always be 2-3 children who are naturally talented, and who will get involved. So if I take your question to how can we bring participation from the whole class, right?
Yes.
A very good way would be, especially for classroom, carefully plan and ask a few questions. You need to manage your classroom, of course, but carefully plan and ask a few questions in between the story. For example, if I'm telling a story in which it's related to a festival, so I say, oh, in the village they were celebrating Pongal, and then I'll say, What is your favorite festival? Who wants to tell me what's their favorite festival? A question like this is so different from what is the capital of, so and so country. This is a complete open-ended question. There is no right, there is no wrong. It's completely coming from the heart. So one, I would say once in a while, ask a few questions. Another thing I do after the story is don't immediately jump to closed-ended question of what did you understand, comprehension-based questions. What did you like in the story? What did you like in the story? You will find so many answers. You will find children who never speak in the class speaking up. Yeah. These are two areas where you'll start getting responses from the shyest child, the quietest child. I would say, please do consider these two. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. That is actually a very, very important thing, asking children open-ended questions. So they will also be a part of the story and not just a listener. To be actively participating in the storytelling activity is very, very important. And that is where, we majorly struggle when it comes, especially to pre-primary children. They're too young and they get distracted too easily. And teachers often, wonder how can I make them sit and listen to me the entire story when they are, just have to listen. That is not really easy for a child of that age. But I think this is a very good thing where they can ask simple, age appropriate questions to them and get them actively participate during the storytelling session.
Right.
With that,
Additionally, again, as I hear you, I'm thinking back. Additionally, especially for the pre-primary, if we are adding some action songs, little sequences in between the story. Like when I tell the story of the rat that was searching for its biscuit. So I will go, the rat went searching and searching and searching and searching. So all the children are involved with you physically. They are enjoying it so emotionally and also in the mind. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So with that, we come an end to the rapid fire round. Moving on to the next segment, it's a very interesting one. It's called Mythbusters. So I'm sure everybody's heard of Ghostbusters, but I think it is very, very important for us to myth bust together because there's a lot of myths going around, especially when it comes to education in India. So we have a few myths that are common amongst educators, and we want you to give us a clarity on these things. So starting with the first one, young children have a short attention span and can't sit through a story. So again, reiterating the one which I just spoke earlier about. So they many educators feel that, especially in pre-primary, children have a very short attention span and hence can't sit through an entire story narration. So what would you like to add on this?
My experience has not supported that. I definitely find that this can happen when there are too many children, like let's say 7,500 pre-primary children. But if it's a small group of max 20 to 25, yeah, not just pre-primary children who don't even go to school, even 2-year-olds have sat through more than 15 minutes. And I stopped, because I planned only 15 minutes thinking, are 2-year-olds, where will they listen? And they are waiting for the story to continue, right? So I think it is the other way around. We are assuming that children do not listen. I understand they are distracted. We have to keep in mind a few things. We'll have to find ways to settle down their energies because nowadays they're very used to, everything is hyper, everything is screaming, everything is clapping, everything is jumping, right? So if you can settle down their energies, I also generally suggest please do not give sugar high, salt high foods just before they come for the session.
Okay.
If you really want them, to sit through. I have seen that they're immediately jumping if they've just had packets of cool drinks just before the session. Yeah. So if that is not happening, they can sit through. They can sit through if we plan our story well, if we plan a nice story ambience, settle them down, bring them into a flow, bring them into a zone of listening to a story. They do surprise us with their ability to hear. I understand a school or an education institution is a different environment. So for them, I would suggest please have rooms. Simple thing, if they give a story session and right behind there is someone coming or going, or there is some noise bleeding from the next classroom, or there's a big window that faces out there where there's movement, there's distraction. Even if somebody walks in and out, to adjust the mic or to do things which are not really required, even those can be distractions. So the moment we are aware of that, we offer a storytelling experience as just that. We're all here in this world like a cocoon, nothing else happening. Uh, and we've chosen the right story and we're sharing it with some basic tips and techniques. It's highly likely that children can sit through longer and longer stories. We need not jump and scream. I've seen in one of the schools where I recommended, we suggested that grandparents come and tell stories. So there was a Marathi grandparent in a Telugu Telugu speaking region, and we just left it. We said, let's experiment. The UKG children just listened like that. Even if they didn't understand, they understood that this person wants to talk to us, wants to share his story, and they cooperated with him. They enjoyed that experience. So I would highly recommend, let's go with that faith. Let's go with good planning, good practice. Keep in mind to take away all other distractions. We ourselves settle down. We ourselves are in a flow. Then go with that energy. They will listen longer.
Yes, ma'am. That is actually a very, very important point that you've clarified for many educators that, yes, young children do listen when it is done in the right way without, having minimal distractions in the classroom. That's a very good point. And adding to the point that you said that the story should be suitable for the children, that the story that the teacher chooses should be age appropriate, it should be suitable. So my next question is regarding the same. Stories, there is a very common myth that stories must always have a happy ending for it to be suitable for young children. So what is your take on that?
I think for a long time, Sushmika, I used to believe that myself. Yeah. But at some point, I realized there are different schools of thought, by the way. There are schools of thought that have always believed that whatever is the real world, show that to the children in stories. There's another school of thought which has believed sanitize everything for children. Sanitize, clean it up, take away violence, take away this, take away that, right? And I think this second school of thought that everything has to be sanitized, cleaned up, made nice, is existing a little more now. However, if we realize, if you look at world literatures, including from our country, it was meant for everyone. It was meant for the folk. So folk meant from zero to your death. Yeah. Everybody would come in. Everybody would take in. Each one would take in whatever they understood at that age and they would leave.
Yes.
And now I realize it is in hindsight, I feel, yes, why not? Because I grew up listening to primarily very happy ending, good ending stories. And perhaps for some time, I gave only those to my children. But at some point, I realized that our stories have all elements because that is how the world is. So I do think it's okay. We can say them in slightly different words, in slightly different ways, but entirely, taking away elements that we think are, problematic. One day they are anyway going to encounter, I'm just remembering the Prince Siddhartha in a way. Yeah.
Yes.
Whichever we protect them today, one fine day they're going to encounter all these truths. So rather than completely insulate, perhaps find slightly softer ways, but it's okay to introduce. Rather, we can discuss with them, ask them back also, what do you think of that or what do you think of this, perhaps.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That is very, very much needed today because many of us are in a dilemma as to what kind of stories to tell children and what is the age appropriate story and whether it should be positive, whether we can add a horror element to it, whether it will impact the child in a bad way. So we have so many questions on that, and I think you cleared most of it today. Thank you so much, ma'am. And moving on to the next question, this is a very common myth amongst a lot of educators that we see today. Only natural storytellers can effectively tell stories to children. So many are hesitant to, set up a story telling session for their own class, saying this statement and having this thought in the back of their minds. So, what do you have to say to
that? Two things. I partially agree that some of us are naturally blessed with some kinds of talent, whether it is sports or whether it is crafts or anything else, right? But the nature of storytelling, it can also be practiced with training. One can acquire it. Yeah. The other is anyone listening now who has not said, you know what happened, and then gone on to narrate something. What have you narrated? Right? We are
Yes.
all storytellers in that sense. So I appreciate your dedication that you want to be careful before you go and narrate in a classroom. I really appreciate that. That's why you're saying, okay, I'm not a storyteller, I can't. Good. So a good place to begin is by watching other people's work, which you think is good. Pick up ideas from there. Jiva Raghunath says imitation is a good starting point. I agree. It's a good starting point. You see someone, that's how children learn, no? Children
Yes.
themselves, when they learn to speak, they see who's speaking how. Then finally they have their own way of speaking by the time they grow up. So I would say that need not be a reason to not start.
Okay.
Yeah, get started, try. Along the way, you will find your own style, you will find your own rhythm, you will find what works for your classroom. And most importantly, please start trying. Your children will teach you. Just start trying. Your children will give you so many ideas.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. That is a very much needed motivation for the RI. Personally, feel and I myself feel very motivated to start trying to tell a lot of stories. Yes. So with that, I think we have broken a lot of myths today, and I think the educators watching would have had some kind of clarity from the words that you've shared with us today. With that, we come an end to the myth busting segment. Moving on to next are very common doubts from educators. So the first one is what role does multilingual storytelling play in engaging a diverse classroom?
Very, very important. I am all for it. However, it's a very loose word, right? We can all have different definitions of multilingual and multicultural. My personal experience, since I narrate in English and in my stories, I have included everything from Telugu to Hindi to Indonesian Bahasa when I was there, to Swahili when I was in South Africa, or to German when in Austria, right? I highly recommend bringing in the language of the learner child, the audience. Yeah. Either we do it ourselves if we are capable, if we are inclined to it, if we are interested in it. If not, if you think, oh, I just can't do it, at least try to bring one word. Yeah. Other option is, I say, get that child to learn one line of a song from their house, and simply include that. Let's say your mother tongue is Marathi and you're telling a Tenali Ramakrishna story. Yeah, you can always learn one or two words. Ayo, I won't do that, said his wife. Okay, let's say. Yeah. Or you can always check in your class. Oh, anybody whose mother tongue is Telugu, can you tell us one line in Telugu? Do you happen to know a little song that we can sing? Just include it somewhere in your story, in the start or in the end. Yeah. Or whichever is the language of children. There are ways to bring in either in the start of the story, in the end of the story. You can make it like a story begin, a story start song, a story close song, or in the middle of the dialogue, a character's, as I said, ayo, simple ways, appadiya in Tamil, simple ways. It just immediately brings a connect for the children. And I remember whenever, I sing, যদি তোর ডাক শুনে কোন আসে তবে একলা চলো রে. So there was this Bengali child that stayed back after the session. Ma'am, my mother tongue is Bengali, right? So I think little words, songs, little proverbs is a very good way to go multilingual without making a big effort, either by ourselves or with the child support.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That's a very good one. I think which we all need, because today's schools, many schools, they have very clear instructions to teachers where they are asking them to strictly conduct a story session only in English and not to include the mother tongue is going to affect the child's language and all that. So that is why we just wanted to put this question forward. So I'm sure many school leaders watching this will also have clarity as to how to make including multilingual storytelling a part of their, even if the teacher is doing it intentionally or not intentionally, I think it's the way of their storytelling and it's how they do it.
Right. So just to add on to that, English language teaching The practices world over today highly acknowledge multilingual classrooms. And gone are the days when they said that the teacher has to only speak English, the child has to only speak English. So even internationally, it's an accepted norm to bring in, with teacher discretion, to bring in these elements. So you're right. Now we have official acceptance of it. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm sure many school leaders watching would have also learned something from this, input of yours. Moving on to the next question. How can we effectively communicate the value of storytelling to educators who might be hesitant to incorporate storybooks, especially into the KG curriculum? So this is one question from us, Caprix, as well as a lot of school leaders have this issue also convincing kindergarten teachers to have storytelling as a part of their everyday lesson plan, to include storytelling in their classes. They are very reluctant and they feel that it is not age appropriate, it is not necessary, and they don't seem to realize the value that storytelling adds to children in the foundational stages. So I'd like to show you a book of ours that we generally recommend our curriculum, schools that have taken curriculum to Caprix powered schools. So this is one of the storybooks which we have in the curriculum. It's called Ronald the Rhino, and we of course have simple picture book based books with one or two lines given. But we feel educators are very much reluctant to follow storytelling as a part of their curriculum. So what are your inputs for them?
Ronald the Rhino. Okay. Yeah. Picture books are highly suitable, of course. So, Sushmita, to answer this question, I will go back to our very start, right? Where we spoke about eventually, when we are looking to create readers.
Yes.
That's exactly what is happening when we tell stories, because they are building the skill of listening. They are listening to oral literature. So not only language learning happens, literary learning happens. It's literacy as well as literary, right? They're not only learning the letters of the alphabet, they're also learning literature. Like, what better combination can we have? It's so difficult to teach literature at that age. But imagine we are developing literature at that age. Then when they actually come to the printed form of literature, which is reading, they take to it far more easily because they're familiar with so many elements. They have experienced it just by listening, right? For example, we have the concept of inference, right? You are listening to something, from this infer information. And then predictive. You predict what is going to happen. That's happening when they listen to a story. They're thinking, okay, now the rat did not find it here. So maybe this animal does not have the biscuit. Yeah. Then when they see the rat asking two animals, what do you think is going to? I think it will go and ask the third animal. Predictive listening. All those qualities are just getting developed so beautifully just by an oral listening. So really, whatever teachers you are trying to do through the book, your oral storytelling becomes an entry point to arrive at the book.
Yes, ma'am. That is, I think, a very, very important point that you've clarified for all of us. Thank you. And moving on to the next question. How can parents support storytelling at a home as a way to counteract excessive screen time?
Yeah. I mean, it's easy for me to say because my children have grown up, but I did belong partially to the generation where the phones were around, and I didn't give my children access until almost they came to high school. They didn't really have access to phones, and even when they were given, we had timed. I'm mentioning this as a person who did walk the talk, okay, partially. I do understand it's very challenging today for your parents, A small start that I always highly recommend. Just give yourself a 1 month challenge. For 1 month, take out 5 minutes every day to tell a story to your child. A very small beginning. Whatever else you are doing, how much time with gadget, I don't know, how much time you're able to give or not able to give, because I know you have your own challenges in life. In the middle of all this, if you can start pulling out 5 minutes every day, which is confirmed zero screen time, you don't have your laptop, you don't have your phone, the child doesn't have its gadgets, it's just you and the child sitting physically and you telling a story. Ideal would be you just narrate, but if that's not possible, second best option, at least read a book. Yeah. But please try this for 1 month. Continuous. Take it like hashtag storytime parent. Yes. One
Yes.
month, 5 minutes every day for the child. And you yourself will come back to me and see the difference. I can assure you, you will see amazing things happening.
Okay. That is a very good one, ma'am. I think all parents watching would definitely, should come up with this challenge and start trying it from tomorrow at least. Yes. So moving on to the last question for the day is one piece of advice for aspiring storytellers.
What I learned in terms of telling is just keep observing and find your style. Just keep observing, telling, you'll find your style. Okay, one. Second aspect is regarding taking it up as a profession. I got a very good advice from a very senior storyteller, Kathy Spignoli. And she said, Deepa, initially, don't expect to make money from storytelling. Make sure you make your money from other things. Okay. So that was very helpful for me. I found other ways to make my money initially, and eventually somehow, all that got left behind and everything is now storytelling. That's a very practical suggestion. So these are my 2 ones. Observe a lot, practice, keep practicing, you'll find your style. Find other ways to figure out finances initially. Of course, you're living in great times now. When I started, storytelling was not so popular, but this is just a backup. Yeah, just have other ways and then go forward.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. That I think is very inspiring and very practical advice that you've given to many aspiring storytellers watching. So thank you for that. And with this, we come to an end of the session. We had a very good discussion, and I'm sure everybody watching had a lot of inputs to take from this particular session, be it parents or early childhood educators, school leaders. You've given us a lot of inputs and a lot to think about as well. So, you are always inspiring, and we have watched you in, your TEDx talks, or we have watched you inspire us on many conferences, and to get a chance to talk to you here and get our doubts clarified and to get your inputs on certain crucial pressing issues that happens in early childhood today is very, very important to us. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Happy to see young minds like you all and Apex Learning Lab organization being so engaged in different aspects of different dimensions of education. Yeah. Wishing you all the best to the entire team. And also teachers, educators, anyone wants to look up more stories, you can visit my channel. It's on YouTube, Deepa Kiran Storyteller. You will find some more videos then. I promise to put more. Yeah. And all the best, Apex Learning Lab, and Sushmita, great interview. Lovely.
Thank you. Lovely meeting you. Thank you. Looking forward to another session, probably live next time.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Yes, you too. Yeah. Bye.